So there was only 3 things in my packet here.
All right, we're on. Good evening, and welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting of March 27th, 2014. We'll start off with David, if you could read the agenda as drafted.
First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda, and I have a recommended amendment. Then add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. Then a public comment period, and then look at remote participation under the TA report. Then we'll look at the HVAC fire department discussion, which is a proposed capital item. Then discussion on ballot questions. The final questions need to be the clerk by April 8th, and Barbara St. Andre from Town Council will be here. And then at approximately 7:20 p.m., the appointment of Ron Stefik, Zoning Board of Appeals, moving from associate member to full voting member. After that, annual town meeting updates, advisory hearing review, selectmen reports, and consideration of a consent agenda consisting of just setting the next meeting for April 3rd, 2014, then breaking into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation on the Cannon et al. Versus Town of Sherborn Zoning Board of Appeals and Town of Sherborn Planning Board that involves the cell tower case. And then another executive session item of union contract negotiations for CM&D.
Okay, and you said you had a change to this, David?
The consideration of Public Safety Committee,
You want to pull that out?
I have that on for April 3rd with a number of related.
All right, so I have a couple of changes or suggested changes. So I'm going to suggest to include that change of moving that to April 3rd. What I'd like to do is just move the order a little bit here. So I'd like to move the appointment of Mr. Stefik up after the TA report section and basically bundle the HVAC fire department discussion and the discussion of ballot questions with the section on annual town meeting and advisory hearings. And because we may just bounce around a little bit on those, if that's okay with you. And also remove the portion of executive session related to the cell tower. There's nothing new on that. That's a bit of a placeholder, so we'll pull that out. So those are my suggested changes, and if that's okay, and anybody has any other
No,
suggestions?
move to amend with those changes.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Great. Okay, so now we're open for public comment, and we have a full packed house tonight.
All right.
Elliot, yep, and you want to say something too, Paul?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes, sir.
I want everyone to know, I walked around my house when I got home from work at 4 o'clock. I've got 3 crocuses in bloom on my front lawn.
Hooray! Hey, spring is coming.
Spring is sprung.
Thank you for that, Elliot.
That was great.
And Paul, you said you had something?
Yeah, I wanted to call for a moment of silence in memory of Ed Walsh and Michael Kennedy, 2 Boston firefighters who died yesterday trying to serve the public. All our firefighters and police officers at any time are at risk of death or injury. And these were 2 firefighters who paid the ultimate price. Thank you.
Great, that's great, Paul.
Good thought.
Terrific thought. Okay, David, I guess we're moving right on to your section.
Sure. Let's start with the remote participation. Last spring, we started looking at a remote participation policy, and we adopted it, and then as a trial period. And so in August, we got a memo out to all the committees asking them to read through this, get their questions back to us, and inform them of an opportunity to vote to opt out of the remote participation. And we had one response, which was from the Board of Assessors. They voted 3-0 on November 13th, 2013 to opt out of the remote participation. And then the trial period ended, and then I just wanted to bring this back for a final vote to actually enact the whole policy.
Do we know if other committees have tried it? I think Planning Board used it.
I've had a
if I
couple of
recall.
requests, but they haven't had, that I know of, didn't end up needing it at the time.
Do we know it works? It's been tested and it's
Yep.
kept, it's periodically tested to make sure it works when we need it?
So they've had remote
Okay.
participation that they've adopted? They use the equipment?
I don't know what they adopted, but yeah, I came in and set it up twice for Conservation Commission.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just
good.
wasn't sure whether they used it for voting or
Yes.
just used it for, oh, they did, okay,
You know, they followed all the rules,
okay.
they used it, I mean, I set it up with the microphones and everything, and it was, one time I actually was here, and so I know that it was successful, and they did have the other person who was missing voted along with it, and they took the correct votes and according to law,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I would move to make the remote participation policy permanent.
I would second that motion. For discussion, I'll just want to add, when I served on the school contract negotiation team, all our meetings were in executive session. I don't believe we really were subject to Sherborn's remote participation policy, but we did use it because we were meeting during the summer every week, and occasionally someone was away and would call in, and we followed the basic procedures that we have here. So it certainly worked and facilitated everybody participating in these meetings intelligently and adding value throughout, so that was great. So,
Good.
all that said, all in favor? Great.
It's worked well in the sense that there's been no abuse.
Yes.
We haven't had any complaints.
There
And
needs to be use for there to be abuse.
it's
More
available.
people use it, yeah.
And if they choose not to, they choose not to. But
But
it's another arrow in the quiver.
That's right.
But the equipment we have can be used for just a simple conference call without needing
That's
to
right.
go through.
That's right. That's right. Right. Good. So that's all you had in that section, I guess, right, David?
Yes, yeah. What did you want to move into?
Mr. Stefik, the appointment of Ron Stefik to the Zoning Board of Appeals, moving him from associate member to full voting member.
Okay, this was due to the resignation of Michael
Of
Jaimo.
one of the best chairs they've ever had, at least in the last several years.
Last several years, I
Yeah.
did it.
So it was decided to move up the associate member to the full voting member and then advertise for an associate.
Well, it was the recommendation.
That's
the recommendation.
Yeah, and so we did put it out there. You had little or no response, I take it. And
Did anybody apply?
I didn't
Permanent
know.
position?
No.
Okay.
so I entertain a motion for.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Great, congrats. You'll have
Tommy will
value.
get a letter out or somebody will. Great. Thank
Will
you.
he have to be sworn in? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And now we'll need another associate member for that board if anybody's interested.
Okay, so do we post that need?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, well, so we'll just follow the same basic order for now, but I wanted to, because we bundled those things, let's start with the HVAC Fire Department. I see Mary Wolf is here. And I think I'm pretty much there. I still had some confusion. I don't know if you can help me understand that, Dave, just sort of where we were. I guess I just want to be sure I'm not concluding incorrectly that we didn't have air conditioning in the original scope of what was voted on by voters. We're able to cover our nut, and maybe have some handouts, I don't know.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good. Why don't I?
Sean Colleen was hoping to be here. He thought we were going to be taking it up later, and I
Okay.
mentioned to be prepared.
Joe, do you want
that
to
it could
put
come
it off,
earlier.
and we can just sort of go back to, that's why bundling this, I think, makes sense.
It's probably best because he can explain I can explain why the alternate one with the AC project is needed, but
Okay,
he can explain it a little more technically than.
all right.
I'd say wait for him.
Yeah,
He's-
we'll
he's
wait.
a volunteer, he's not getting paid to do all this if he wants to come.
Right. Okay, and then Barbara's coming too, so
Right.
for these other things. So let's just regroup then on the annual town meeting updates, and I added in advisory hearings, just sort of a debriefing on how things went with advisory. And for that, I see we did get a new model updated today, and I hope that you gentlemen appreciate the different formats, a little simpler, shows the important information that we needed. Hopefully we can adopt that sort of thing, or even more succinct model next year, rather than all the extraneous stuff. I did, as Mary now probably knows, we've,
It's supposed to be in there.
2 days later, after your hearings ended, we've taken another look at supplementals, and there's an additional $59,000 in there, and you're welcome to share your reaction, if any, on that, but I know that we spent quite a bit of time Monday night talking about, you spent quite a bit of time, and I know I interjected and confused things a bit, but we, the importance of, to you all, as well as the community, for what we were doing with free cash, and you had determined to use free cash for some of these capital items based on the information you had in front of you as of Monday night, and 2 days later, you're out another, we're out another 59 beans. So that's, to me, is a bit disturbing, or discouraging. You know, it's too bad. It would have been nice to know that Saturday rather than yesterday, today, for you guys. But it doesn't impact the bottom line. It doesn't impact the need to change your free cash motion, or lack thereof, or
Right.
no action on that motion. That was the whole.
That was the beginning of the devolution.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So we're okay there. But, you know, this model, we had a lot of typos to fix and all that. I see we still got a few. We're referencing the wrong articles. And, you know, and I'd asked to have this on Friday morning. I'd asked to have it in this version versus the version you were working with, so it's good to finally see it. But, you know, I wish we had somehow gotten to it before, because even if you think, you're looking at the model change here, which is FY15 to FY14. That column's very meaningful. If I were just coming in off the street and I looked at the model I picked up on Saturday, I'd look at the change, and I think it was change of budget year to budget year, not knowing what I'm really reading at the heading, you see? And so when I look at that, I look at a total decrease in the budget of $37,000 would be my impression, looking at what was in my hand on Saturday morning, versus in reality, it's a $650,000 increase over last year in total for all of the budgets spread through. So that was one of the reasons why I was driving hard on getting that alternate view of this than what we got. Yeah, I see we've adopted the proper House-Senate resolution numbers, and I thought that might impact your numbers, but we're just squeaking by, it looks like, so that's good. And at least it's better late than never to know what we're dealing with here on these supplementals and so forth, but
They were, supplementals are for this year, so.
that's
they
right.
don't-
I know, but to the extent you had a public hearing, and you were talking about them, you know, one of them was a big jump in police overtime as an example. You know, the public might have found that interesting to know, might have asked a question or two about that with the numbers we're facing now than what we had on Saturday. Likewise, snow and ice, somebody might have questioned that. They would have learned a bit about how snow and ice works that they might possibly not know, and so forth. So it's just all part of helping the public know where their money's going, and also the thought process your group went through, and I think you did a great job. You and all of your folks on advisory, you know, people can see how hard you work to get smart about what you're dealing with, how thorough you were in the deliberations you took on each item. And I think nobody can say there were slackers on advisory, that's for sure.
Can I ask you a question on this?
Absolutely.
I'm
Yep.
noticing the net amount to be raised is the same as the maximum allowable tax levy. I thought at our meeting the other night, the decision was made to create a little gap in between those two numbers.
So did I. So I don't understand that math, frankly. I tried to figure it out, I couldn't. So they are equal, when I thought we'd see a little bit of a surplus, or maybe it's in that surplus buried in there that makes them equal. So maybe you can explain it.
I don't have it.
I can give you one, because I was spare.
I thought I'd get the night
I
off.
had my own, I brought my own. Diane printed one out for me.
There's no rest for the order.
Yeah. See, Mary, we're not putting her on the spot, but,
I should have hidden out.
yeah.
Okay,
And you're
so,
welcome to sit at the table here, Mary.
No, good.
Yeah, good, okay.
She wants to sit outside the lobby.
yeah,
She wants to sit in her car, drive away.
you're getting closer, yeah. Okay, so where are we looking at right now?
Well, what Mike was asking is if you look at the total amount to be raised, 26,146,099. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
no, the tax levy, and basically we have a net of zero. No surplus, no deficit.
What was the reserve fund on the other one?
The reserve, we added 130.
I know, but you had 135, but we had an odd number, and it was going to change by some odd 4,000 for the, getting the right state aid numbers in there, right?
It was wasn't it $1,000 short of the?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
It's symbolic, but it's still
That's
something.
right, yeah. So we're looking for that
$1,000.
$1,000 so that we can say we didn't go all the way up to Proposition 2.5.
Okay.
It was a big thing.
You know, I don't know right now.
All right.
That.
Well, did we put 50 in the stabilization
We
fund?
put
or was it
50,000.
49 or some
No.
lesser number?
No, 50.
50.
That's what you voted on, right? And
Yes.
that's shown here.
Yes, 50 into stabilization.
So now when you look at this, Mary, given all of the corrections of making sure we got the right amounts for free cash use and so forth,
We have a balanced budget going into 15.
we have a balanced budget. And if you go to that second page, the little box that deals with the free cash
Right.
in our reserve. So the free cash, now part of your ability to do what you did was knowing that you added to your reserve fund 135 grand. So you have kind of that money you hope will be in the bank next year, the free cash bank.
It'll fall
right?
out to free cash.
Yes.
Borrowing.
So that gives you comfort to go below, say, 4% free cash.
I think we're down around 3.5.
Yeah, it's 3.63 on this thing. And then the total reserves are, excuse me, 7%.
Yes.
I'm not sure if those total reserves include, and I think they do, the OPEB stabilization
It
fund balance after the 200 grand's moved out.
moved out.
But my understanding is there's some question whether that is viewed as a reserve
or not.
or not.
Because it takes 2/3 to get it out of there.
Yeah, so anyway, you're healthy. I would say this turned out a little more aggressive than you thought it was going to be in terms of use of free cash.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's good.
But still good, yeah.
Good.
There's no free cash once being used to
No.
offset a deficit
That's
or to
correct.
apply to the tax rates.
That is absolutely correct.
It's been bringing the missing $1,000.
And there's Ben, he can, it's in his, yeah, yeah, he's got his driving gloves on. Or something, I don't know. There's something in there. Yeah. So,
From up here, from the Chilliwack raised.
Pardon us while we enter a session.
no, that's fine. Well, we're kind of hoping you have,
There are more of us, so we can
Help us make-
talk to each other.
go for it. So that's all good. So while we're on the topic, one of the things you guys approved while they were talking, all the capital items, one was the truck. And I did get from Ed, one of the things I had wanted was, they call it a replacement schedule, but just an overview, and I didn't copy it out, but of all of the equipment and the mileage and stuff like that. Well, it turns out this thing was last done in December of 2011, so it's more than 2 years old. But on it, he had, as a replacement for fiscal 14, the truck that we're replacing in now fiscal 15. So it's consistent with the schedule.
Dave's going to pass that around.
Oh, you got that? Oh, good. Okay. And separately, I noticed that there's a JD loader of 125 grand. I don't know exactly what that does, but that was slated for last year, and it wasn't done. And we certainly didn't have it on this year, so that's just something and he had a few other things slated for this year. So it looks like everything's moved over, but apparently the JD loader wasn't as urgent as we thought, even though it's in the negative 8-year category. So what's that, one of these things we piecemeal together? I don't really know.
You know that loader's out of service right now, right?
What's that?
You know that loader is out of service.
I don't
right now.
know that, no.
That's the item that we were
So we're,
going back and forth with the town accountant on whether it could
Oh.
be included in snow.
oh, so that's this guy right here that's out of service? All right. So we're repairing it. The question is where the funds come from on that, right?
It's included in the snow and ice.
It is in the snow and ice, in the supplemental, so that's where that went. Okay, okay.
Hey, David, is this date of December 14th accurate, or did somebody just forget to change the date?
No, that's the old thing.
That's not accurate.
The date's not accurate.
I'll have to confirm with Ed, but
I mean, updated December 14, 2011?
Yeah, it looks like that's what it was done, because it still shows fiscal 14, see? Which they would have been looking back in that time frame.
But it also shows a 2014 dump truck. So I don't know if that was projected or it's something we have.
I think it
Didn't
was
we buy that last year? That was in the acquisition schedule?
yeah, this doesn't have the pickup either.
Right. Right, so I think this is an old schedule, it needs to be updated, but it would have, would have been useful in our
It's kind of par for the
discussions
course, though. I mean,
earlier, yeah. When we talked about that, because I think clearly we've got a whole, like, we have fiscal 16 and 18, we've got a couple of 175, 180 grand items and a couple of 40 and 80 grand things.
Well,
So it's-
essentially, you have like 10 pieces of equipment for every man or woman in the department.
Yeah, well, that begs the question, what do we need all this stuff for, doesn't it? And what do we do with it all? So that's something I think we should put on a future agenda, is just a higher level overview of all the stuff we got.
Was it too much equipment or not enough?
That's right, right.
You never have enough.
That's debatable.
You
If you
never
have too
enough.
much equipment, you have three problems. First, where do you put it all?
That's right.
And if you can't fit it indoors, so it's outdoors, then you're going to have to replace it on a faster rate, because this,
Yeah,
and when you don't use something for a while, try and start it up.
that's right, things
You
need to be
find the
used.
battery's dead, and
Yeah.
so it's just,
Diesel engines love to be run.
you're
you know?
better off with fewer pieces that are more versatile. that you-
Right,
Like the tractor I have on my farm, I can take off a manure spreader, put on a log splitter,
yeah.
I can put a snowplow on. I mean, you have one tractor, you have different pieces of things you add to it, but
What do you wear when you drive that thing, Paul? I'm just trying to get a picture in my
I'm
mind.
sure it's similar to what he's wearing now, Peter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got a dump truck last year. I think that's the fiscal 14 F-550 dump truck. I remember that. And that was a 60 grand acquisition. And we just got it. We just paid for it last week, right? I think I saw that in the warrant we paid.
So the one we're replacing this year is the Mack.
Mack dump truck has got 45,000 miles on it. It's a 2000. They have a 15-year life, but I guess that one's now in years, will be in year 16. 15. Speed up. Rusty. But so anyway, this was what I was hoping we'd have in our hands to have the discussion, and that was very helpful. And Ed, he sent me a PowerPoint. He had a PowerPoint ready with pictures of the
I have that.
old truck and the new truck.
If you want to walk through it.
It's good for these, you know, I did look at it. So he may want to show that to the, you know, at town meeting and give an overview, like what was missing on the PowerPoint was this overview of equipment. Like we saw the police chief had his list of equipment. The fire chief showed 4 pieces. I think we have more than 4 pieces, but he showed 4 or 5. But at least we had a rough idea what we had and what they're used for. This is the,
Ed could take a picture of the equipment outside. It's not where the equipment is, it's on fire.
yeah, no. The point is just an overview of we have 5 dump trucks because of XYZ. We have 3 loaders because of what, you know, whatever. It's that kind of stuff. We have 4 small dump trucks, and we got 8 pickups, or, you know, whatever it is. I don't know what we've got there.
So this truck, I mean, the mileage is low. I think we talked to Ed the last time. There's concern because there's rust and
Yeah, and it's breaking
so
down
forth.
all
It's
the
breaking
time.
down all the time. You know, with other kinds of vehicles, there's been great progress in the last 10 or 15 years in terms of engine life and parts and all kinds of stuff. I mean, do we expect a longer life out of this new vehicle that we're buying for $175,000, or is this going to have the same kind of 40,000-mile lifespan?
You shouldn't talk in miles.
Or
Should be
hours?
hours anyway,
Yeah, you
right?
shouldn't talk in miles.
Yeah,
That
it's
thing
hours.
pushes a ton of snow.
Yeah, so hours.
Yeah, it's hours. So we have miles showing, but we do ask for hours too.
He's
so I don't see
got
hours.
hours in here on this
On what he gave us.
5,900.
Yeah, that's a fair amount of hours for something that's been.
Right, so
Run hard.
just the question is, do we expect a longer lifespan out of the new generation, or is it still the same?
That's a good question. Couldn't answer that one.
And if we do expect longer lifespan, does that allow us to push off some of the upcoming replacements just by how we use the trucks?
I don't know either.
You mean longer than 15 years?
Well, I'm wondering, that's what I'm wondering, yeah.
Yeah.
See, if you
We'd
look
have
at
to ask.
5,900 hours, that's like 200,000 miles of a car usage, only it's used hard because it's pushing snow and all that, so. I mean, it all makes sense. It's, when you see this schedule, it helps to see how this spreads out, but it will also help to have a better overview of the strategy of all of this stuff.
That's how it spread out in 2011, presumably.
That's
it spreads
correct.
out the same way.
That's correct, yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
nice to
just
get that
moved over a
updated,
little.
so that's what I want to say about the CM&D truck. While advisory was looking at their stuff. Any insights you can add to what we were wondering about?
Ben doesn't know either.
No.
I know that there were some adjustments made after the Model 6 that we were using Saturday and Monday night.
Well, 5, we were using 5, we're now into 7. This is
Okay.
7 PC, I think it's named after
Yes,
me.
it is, Peter.
But you did some alchemy, Ben, to get to where we had that gap, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's not coming out on this.
We'll look into it.
Yeah.
I have a vague recollection that there was you guys had asked for or mentioned that there was some adjustment in a school aid, I think, or a school reimbursement.
Some resolutions.
No, I mentioned that this budget uses the 40% reimbursement rate on circuit breaker monies for our
That's
district.
correct.
When the state provides, has, in the last several years, and there's no reason to think it won't next year, 70%. So there's a future cushion, future turn back that's going to replenish free cash as it does every year.
I'll go back and look, but I vaguely recall a email from the town accountants explaining what had gone on. In a sense, there would have been approximately $1,500 surplus left after we did
Yes.
the reappropriation to of $135,000
Right.
additional to the reserve fund.
Yeah.
But the combination of this other thing that she put in that I didn't really pay attention to, and the
Well, we did-
1,500 approximately, she came up with just some adjustments in revenue to make it balance.
Balance out, and that's probably what it is. There's slight revenue changes there to
Yes.
balance it out.
They were very small, but enough
To
to
make
make
it
everything look just
zero.
just right.
And so you don't have to revise that motion that you'd made about no action on free cash.
Not yet.
Right. Yes, sir. Sean?
So when we talk about dump trucks, we should talk about the people we have to sit on, for one. And if this is primarily a snow fighter, then someone should analyze at about $100 an hour, that's what we would pay this truck if it was a contractor. How long would it take to justify that?
Right.
Because we have contractors with
Yeah,
better
some
trucks than this.
contractors are more, some are less, but
So-
bigger, depending on the equipment as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there is, I mean, you brought up the equipment, there's more equipment than was planned for the town, because when we built the building, we modeled the building, we showed that every piece of equipment could fit in there, and they can't fit them anymore. That means they got more equipment than they said they needed.
But Sean, you just made a point that's intriguing to me. We can hire this truck for $100 an hour, and let's say we have 4 storms a year, I'm just making this up, that needs 8 hours per storm, so that's 4 storms times 8, or 32 hours times 100 is
Peanuts.
peanuts.
$175,000.
I think that's
Appreciate it.
underestimating, though. I mean, I think these trucks are out 24 hours a day sometimes, Paul.
That's right,
They are, but
This
you
year-
could do it, so do it on a worst case, it's this year.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
hired a contractor with a 10-wheeler, take what you paid him and see if you'd pay for this truck in 10 years of hiring him.
No, that's right. And the other part of it is, of course, the argument is, well, with our truck and our guys, we know it's always available versus occasionally the contractor, his truck breaks down, we're out of luck because he's a no-show, or he gets caught up somewhere else. So I'm not saying that to justify, I'm just saying that's a counter-argument to that. But that's all part of what I'd like us to have at some point in a future agenda item, to just kind of go over in general that. You know, I think the need for this bad boy or his brother and his next brother.
Right.
Coming up
One's
over
on
the
for
next
next
couple of
year,
years.
actually.
Yeah. It's clear to me, you know, it's 6,000 hours of use, hard usage, and the thing's unreliable, and it seems like it gets used quite a bit in the storms, and we certainly were challenged this year with storms, so.
We were. And I wouldn't argue that this is at the end of the line. I'd just argue, do we need it?
Right,
Because we didn't have enough people to put in them the last 2 storms.
yeah.
There was half a fleet of trucks sitting at the highway garage while we were running around knee-deep in snow. You didn't have enough people.
That's interesting.
You still don't?
You don't know that, yeah. Yeah, because we've got a couple of big bad boys here, don't we?
Well, next year, they show another 175,000.
Yeah, I think we have five big ones, is that what he said?
And the year after, 180.
Yeah.
But this is a serious point that Sean is making. I mean, I'm mindful of, it would be like fighting a war and having the production line give you, 1,000 airplanes, but if you only have 5 pilots,
Yeah.
Right.
what good is you producing 1,000 planes? You still have only 5 pilots.
Personnel.
You can have the 5 pilots working 24 hours a day, but you still have only 5 pilots. So why keep buying planes if if our equipment is sitting idle because we don't have the manpower to pull it out and use it during these storms? Why are we spending $175,000?
It's not just our equipment. There's contractors that sit their trucks because they don't want to come work for Sherborn because we don't have enough, you don't pay enough.
I just want to point out that Ed didn't know that this was being discussed.
Understood.
We invited him for the executive session.
Yeah, so again, I want to have an
Yeah.
overview discussion of this at a future
Yeah,
meeting, okay?
yeah,
I just raised it because I just got this in hand
right.
yesterday or whatever.
So maybe get an updated one of these.
If we get
before the
if we get this updated
Right.
and have a discussion about the overview of why we need all this stuff, how we use it. And, as an example, we've outsourced mowing, but a few years back, we bought this sweet big mower that was, I forget what it was, but it was
Right.
somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 120 grand,
So he's on the,
April 3rd agenda?
I don't know if we want to rush it, I'd rather see
well,
him take
he's
the
coming in
time.
for some other items, so
Okay.
he might as well.
If
get
he,
it done.
if he can, and we can have an intelligent discussion, that would be great, because from that, we might discover, yes, we're buying a new truck, but, we only use three of the five we have anyway.
Right, right.
Then we might rethink our approach before town meeting steamrolls on.
Well, we haven't voted it anyway.
That's right.
We have not voted.
That's right. We didn't vote on it Saturday. And if I was asked to vote on it Saturday, I might have held back because I was waiting on this stuff. So that's why. So, all right, good. Well, since Sean's here, I think that can get us into the next thing, which is the fire station HVAC needs. And we had, and I thank you for sending some information. That was useful to me because I was able to look and see what we had in the scope before, right, of the 153,000, which was net of 18 grand of the green grant, or whatever we had going there, the Green Communities Grant. We just authorized payment on the insulation that was done, and we benefited by that grant to the tune of 20,000. So we're doing better. And I guess so if you have any information, that would be
Yeah,
good.
why don't,
Showing up at the table.
why don't I
She
pass
brought
out,
you up at the table.
Who?
So we can.
Sean?
Yeah, we can put him up there so we can understand what he's saying.
The cable
Well,
system
David's
works
stuff
better if
first,
there's a
yeah.
microphone.
David's gonna open.
this is just the excerpt from the
Yes.
bid that went out.
Yeah.
The bid that went out was, what, 300 pages of specs, 200 pages of specs?
You want it, Sean?
So that has the
Yeah.
bid that we received back.
Which has the options, right?
Right, it has the alternative in there.
Alternates.
Yeah, the alternates.
So I didn't,
if
that's
you
the
look-
problem. I didn't understand when we were talking about alternate 1 or 2 the other day.
If you
Now
look
I
at,
do.
inside the front cover is the page that refers to the alternates that were put out to bid.
Yeah.
And,
So somehow we discovered during the engineering phase of this, that
Yeah.
they came back and said, we'd recommend you, while you're at it, that you ought to have a second boiler, which is the alternate 2,
so,
and you also ought to do your air conditioning stuff, so I'll let
Yes.
you speak.
so let's, I want to get this to Sean, and then, let's walk through, and
Oh, yeah.
if I get something wrong according to your memory, let me know. So last year when we were looking at it, if you look, it says FY13 annual
Yeah.
town meeting estimate.
Yep.
There was construction cost estimated, general contracting, which for other repairs, project design and engineering of $12,000, and then a contingency of 10%, for a total of $171,700, and then an estimate for a green community grant of $18,000.
Yep.
So then the net result was $153,700, and that's what went to town meeting.
Yep.
After the we did an RFQ process,
Okay, that's-
assigned the engineer,
Yeah.
and then we put that out for a not to exceed $12,000. And they came up, their initial pass at everything that was needed was well over 200,000, I think.
Yep.
And then we,
Yeah, and there's a few things that weren't even, we just,
right, we just crossed off, cut it down. And then when the project actually went out to bid,
So the 200, I'm sorry, if I'm looking
Yep.
across the top, David?
yeah,
The 200 is basically the same scope versus the 150.
right, having the engineer look at it,
Okay.
with no restrictions,
Yes.
that's what they were recommending.
Yeah.
So we met a few times, and that was cut down with the engineers, and then it was put out to bid with an estimated project not to exceed 200,000.
Yeah, all right. So I'm seeing what I was looking for.
So what was bid, the bids we received was this base project of 138,428.
Yeah, and that compares to the 131,828 that we have remaining available.
Right.
Okay.
So that was the 6,000 or so deficit that I could,
And that 131,828 is original scope.
right.
Gotcha.
And then the alternate one bid was 36,430.
For the air conditioning,
Yes. And
repair and replacement of significant components of the existing air conditioning
piping,
system,
condensers,
piping,
yeah.
condenser and all that, yeah.
And there was another recommendation that he had was for a second boiler so that they could alternate service and to provide some redundancy.
And lengthen the life then, under that
Exactly,
scenario,
right. So that was 34,630 is what was bid.
Do you have a rough idea what in the first scope, without the alternates, what the boiler component of that is?
The first,
So if we didn't do, how much we
You
pay
could-
for a boiler?
you could pick
Boiler part.
you can do the base project of 138,400
No, that's not what I'm
and
asking.
then add the second boiler
Yeah,
for
yeah, no,
34.
No, I'm just trying to compare what we're spending on the first boiler. Is it 35 grand, or is it more like 60 grand? You see
Oh,
what I'm
just,
saying?
well, I think the size drops down. And
For the
correct me,
alternate?
if you do the second boiler, the size of the first one drops down and,
It does, so,
So, because what I'm getting at is, let's say it was 60 grand for the first boiler.
Yeah.
And for another 35 grand, we can double the life of it. That, if you can make that statement. I don't know that you can.
I can't make that
I'm a-
statement. I can say that
they're definitely smaller.
it's not that far off from the 36. I mean, yeah, it's
about
a
the
much
same.
bigger boiler. So the first, the single big boiler is more than the 36.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's
So-
more of a backup, not an alternating used boiler.
No, it would be.
It's a little bit of both. They program it to do that.
So if you have a
And-
second boiler, do you need as big a first boiler?
Yeah,
No,
well,
that's
that's where it became somewhat cost-effective. That's why I can't tell you exactly how much it is, because we were at a threshold, and they don't get to really play around with the numbers. The energy model says you had to be at this many BTUs. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what it was.
Yeah.
So you have to be there. And that pushed it to a fairly significant size boiler. At the same time, they can just have two that does the same thing. So at a lower cost per boiler, you're running a smaller boiler most of the time, because most of the time the building will run on the one.
Yeah.
But they have to design it for the
But
negative 5-degree day or whatever
So
it is.
presumably this 34.5 or 35, whatever it is actually less than
In the
the
first
marginal
one.
cost of the boiler. Well,
Yeah. Oh,
then
yeah.
the marginal cost of the second boiler, because either that or there's some offset in the 138 that we should be talking about if they put the second boiler in.
Yeah.
Yeah, in other words, if we don't put the second boiler in, maybe there's some savings. that we
Well, I
could-
don't know. I mean, that's what
Well, I think what you're saying is you have to have a base level of BTU capacity on the first boiler. And you can get away with something less in the second boiler. And the installation, some of the if you were just gonna install the second boiler, not the first boiler, to do that, you'd have additional installation costs that we're not seeing in the 35. That would be my take of how that would work.
I think it says it's an additive cost, so I think that 34.6 is not the full cost of
That's
the boiler. It's the full cost of the boiler
Installed.
plus
Install,
what the
right.
savings would be on the other one,
Exactly, it nets out. So
in net sound.
it could be 60,000 under that 138, but,
Reduces the 138.
right, but we don't bid it that way. We give them the whole spec and,
Yeah, you're not allowed to break that out. We have to take alternate one to get to alternate two.
Right.
And you either take it or leave it. And there's more to it. Say there's a $400,000 BTU boiler. That's what it takes. That thing's huge.
Right.
Yeah.
You can do it with two 200,000 BTU boilers. But then you're going to have twice the installation. There's computer programming that has to go into the Johnson controls. There's other costs associated with that. You'll gain some efficiency because you're running a smaller boiler most of the time.
And you'll have some redundancy, so if one goes.
You
out,
have
get
some
another.
redundancy because there's computer there are computer
repairs or
controlled.
whatever, yeah.
That can happen. But
So,
we don't put in two boilers we don't have redundant boilers here.
Right.
And this building's much larger, so.
yeah, so the justification for the redundant boiler, I'm still missing that grasp.
Well, I can think of one. If you have two boilers, you reduce your risk of failure by 50%.
I understand.
It's like having two engines on an airplane. if you have a one-engine
Stakes are a
airplane,
little less with the boilers at the fire
Well,
department.
he just said, we have one boiler here.
Right.
Every time I've come in, the heat's been on.
Right. But, I mean, it was originally put in there. We didn't put it in there just for the sake of putting it in. We put it in because we crossed a threshold into a much more expensive boiler.
For the
So,
first one,
right. So without knowing those numbers, because you don't know those numbers when you're designing it,
yes.
the engineer can speculate. They put it in as an alternate. They
No,
say
I
you
get-
can put this in as an alternate, and you don't know the number till it comes back. The way he bid this, the way the contractor chose to bid this, that's where it comes out.
I'm still
He's the only one that came out with that number. Everyone else came out with a different number, but
not following you.
Well, from what he bid was the large boiler, the whole base project for the 138.
Yes.
If we decided to choose alternate 2, his his increase would be 34.6, but that's taking out the big boiler that's already included in his 138, applying that to,
Oh,
Yeah, none of
see,
that
that's not what I'm
changes.
getting. So you're taking out the big boiler and putting in 2 smaller boilers. You're
that's
putting
where
in
I
a
lost you.
smaller boiler as the base boiler and a redundant small boiler. Is that correct?
it'll be 2. Yeah, they're brother and sister. They're not, there's no A and B. Like this one takes the load, then this one. They alternate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when the
yes.
demand says both, they both kick on.
Okay, I get
Yeah,
that.
it's not a
I
big
didn't-
and a small.
I didn't get that. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought this was to supplement the big original
No,
boiler.
No. It's
Okay.
because we need, I'm making that number up. We need 400,000 BTUs. You can do it with 2.
so the base bid had boiler like A,
Yes.
and
This
then
is two
alternate
Bs,
is
two
B and
alternate
C.
Bs.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a better, so now what's needed is justification for having the 2 lower capacity boilers for additional cost because the reliability, the longer life, the I don't know what. Those are the explanations that I still,
You're not going to catch me pushing that very hard. It was in there.
okay.
As an engineer, you'd say this is a good idea. It's not my money.
I think
I'm
there
not
was,
sitting here saying that. I'm just saying that
Okay.
I don't want to speak for Michael Lesser, but I remember looking at that there was some energy savings, but as far as the return on that, the payback on that was
Yeah.
not something that we would look at in 5 years of
Yep.
recouping.
Heck
you
no.
know. So if you walk through, you go down to the
So we're
next,
not penny wise and pound foolish by
not
going
doing
with the
it?
big bad
No.
boy instead of 2
No,
small
we do much more
boys.
foolish things around.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the insulation was a real thing that we can talk about payback. I don't think we could even have the discussion about the payback on the boilers.
Right. So if
Fuel,
you,
anyway.
if you go to the lower,
but they are better boilers than what we had.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
they're incredibly good boilers, yes.
Yeah, they're more
Whether it be the
efficient.
1 or the 2.
They're more energy efficient, they have more output for less fuel, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you can't be less efficient than a steam boiler, and that's what we have.
But Paul, I think what Dave's saying is whether you go 1 boiler or 2 boilers, the energy efficiency for the 2 boilers is not so great that it's worth
That's right.
the cost, the
That's
additional
right.
cost.
Yeah, the net change there is minimal.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you haven't sold me on the extra boiler.
No, I'm not gonna.
But alternate 1 sounds like it's, because we have air conditioning,
right,
because it feeds off of some of the same piping and so
Right.
forth. If you do it later, you're gonna pay more and
right.
have downtime and all of that.
So if you look at the next section down, the available appropriation of 153, and a new number for the community grant of 20,936. So the total available is 174. And then what we've paid out is 12,000 for the engineer, $880 to do an attic catwalk that allowed them to be able to do the insulation project.
Yeah.
So you're left with 131,828, and that creates a $6,600 deficit on just the
Just
base project,
Yep, original
Right.
scope.
which
You were
we could work
searching
with
for
the vendor.
ways to live with that.
And the vendor was willing to work with us and figure that
Okay.
piece out. But the alternate 1, if you throw that in, the 36,430,
Yeah,
and then speaking with Sean, there was that original contingency that we added in a reserve for other unknown repairs. That's another
that's a new
28,500.
contingency
Well, it was in the original budget,
at 15.6.
yeah.
Let me correct one word he
Oh,
just said.
So
Okay, go
so
ahead.
the 131,828 includes no No, it has a contingency in it. Or it doesn't.
No, he took it out.
What do you mean we took it out? The bid
It's
didn't
in the
ask for a
one-
contingency?
The 153 includes a contingency of 15.6. See
Yeah,
that up above?
right.
In the top left, up in the 171,700?
So did this
Right.
bid ask for a contingency, or is that base price, the base price without contingency?
The bid was there wasn't a contingency in there.
In the
Let me-
bid?
And that's what I had met with the vendor to see if there was something he had built in to pull out.
But what did our bid ask for?
It didn't ask for a contingency.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Let me
So-
sum that up a little, because the
Yeah.
10,000, I think David just said for unexpected repairs. We have expected repairs. They're not inside that bid. Hey, that's an HVAC contractor. But we have,
Repairs for what?
Repairs
Of
to the
new
building.
stuff?
no,
these are-
repairs to the building
repairs to the
itself.
building.
There's
You-
plaster, paint, there's flooring.
But we had that up in the construction, up in the
Yeah, but
original.
you've now eaten it up.
We've eaten it up.
It's
with
gone.
We
It
don't have
hasn't-
it available. We haven't done it, but we don't have it available, is what you're saying.
Right.
Wait, okay.
How'd we eat it up?
Well, okay, it's still sitting there inside the money, but it hasn't been used, and if you don't use it, use,
Okay, so the
David's-
138 is inaccurate to compare to the 131, because in the 131, there's 15.6 of contingency, and there was some amount built into that construction cost
repairs.
for repairs.
Sounds like it was $10,000.
no, you can use the 131 if you want. One is money that you allocated.
No, I know,
One is what's left.
So why are we double counting the 10,000 for repairs then?
You're not, you haven't spent it.
Well, but we're working off of the base, right? The
You
base
can just,
pro-
hold on, if you just start, I'm trying to understand his spreadsheet, because he did it different than me.
Okay.
If we started with $153,000, 700,
Yes.
okay?
Which included contingency of 15.6.
Well, it doesn't matter what it
and-
included.
yes, it does, and it included repairs,
Okay,
all right?
start with that.
Yeah,
Add to it 20,936.
yeah,
Got it.
That's what Michael Lesser wrote a check for.
right,
You get 174.
Right, that leaves us.
Subtract 12,000.
right,
Subtract 880.
right,
Subtract 29,928.
yeah.
What do you have? 131 at
131
828.
left
Forget about the
over.
contingency. You haven't used it, you haven't spent it.
I know,
We
but
get it.
that's what's left in the budget.
That's what's
Yeah,
left. in the budget.
131.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The base bid's 138,000.
and
Yeah.
what's in that base bid? There's no repairs, is what you're saying, and there's no.
No, we still
contingency.
need that 10,000. We still
There's
need,
no repairs.
theoretically,
there's
we still need the contingency.
No contingency.
I think if you look up at the original estimate of the 125.5 on the construction cost, that 125.5 is supposed to be the boiler project plus the insulation project,
Yes.
right? Which actually came in at 138 plus the 29 we paid for the insulation.
Well-
So it'd be,
Right, and plus now we're discussing the
Well,
2036.
oh, this is the new one.
Sean, is the 10,000 reserved for repairs enough where you had 18,6 before?
Depends on if you take the contingency or not.
So the 18,6 and the 10, that's a,
Well, you're a little bit more comfortable with the 10 if
Those
you
are the
know that the
same projects?
contingency still exists.
yeah, but those are the same projects, is that what you're saying?
They could feed into the same.
Okay.
Yes.
So we got 8,600 of savings on the extra construction on this model, which,
But what is the issue before us? I mean, with all these numbers, I'm trying to,
Well, we're just trying to get Paul, here's where I'm at, okay?
don't we want to go for the air conditioning?
Yeah, I want to go for
Wanna
the air
go for the air
conditioning.
conditioning. We know what that number is.
Uh,
So all these other things, whether there was a contingency or wasn't.
No, I'm sorry. We have left in the original scope, if you back out, the way I look at it, if you back out the original budgeted contingency and the original amount budgeted, because it was included in what was sold to the voters for the 153.7 was repairs. You back out 10 of repairs, whatever the number, that leaves 106 grand for the base project. And we're looking at 138 for the cost of the base project. And if we assume no change in scope of the base project, then what we're looking at is an additional, this additional 28 grand, 32 grand, or whatever it is, 20,
I don't see it that way.
see, that's how I see it.
Peter, look at the construction cost was 125.5.
Yeah, that included repairs.
It didn't. The 125.5 didn't. That's the
Yes, it
top, that's
did.
the top number.
I know, that included that.
The 125.5 included the insulation project and the base project.
Base project.
Okay.
Okay, base and installation.
Okay, so then the apples to apples comparison is to
And then-
take the
So it
29
actually-
off of
Yeah,
125.
yeah,
Now
yeah,
you're
yeah.
at 96,
Add back
and it's a
8.6.
$42,000 more expensive base project.
Yeah.
If you do
So
the
base
base,
project just went up by almost 50%.
if you do the base plus the alternate
How's that
one,
happen?
it's 43,000.
Yeah, so how does that happen? How's it go up by almost 50% in 1 year?
We hired an engineer, they came up with the specs, put it out to bid.
Oh, I forgot we paid him too, right?
Well, his was
That's the
12.
12.
It was 12, and we factored that with it, so we came in on budget for that.
But in terms of the base project, we paid $12,000 to find out it was going to be $50,000, 50% more expensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a big jump.
And again,
Before going to
normally,
the alternates.
what you would do is you would allocate money for an engineer and you'd come up with the specs and put it out to
Before you
bid. Right.
come to town meeting.
Right, but I think the intent, when they started, was to get it done before last winter
The
because
intent
it
was to
didn't
try and get
finish.
it done before the boiler blew up,
Right.
which it's
So,
actively trying to do.
so the engineer and what he or she came up with, or they came up with, for the base project, are they doing more than we thought we needed done?
More than we thought. Well, understand, we didn't have an engineer to assess that. We had
Yes.
several people.
Well, where they're surprised, say, oh, geez, we should have thought of that, whatever it is, ducting or
I'm sure, I mean, there was 200 pages of
copper
specs, so
pipes
there's,
versus plastic pipes,
There is some of that that might need to be done. There's an extra run of ductwork that's in there that it needs to be done. The engineer verified it needs to be done.
And
It was
just-
under-designed as, in the original building.
Yeah, it's not, I'm just looking to learn from this, not to find out
Right.
how we screwed up. I want to find out how we might have screwed up is one way to look at it, so we don't screw up again when we do this sort of thing, because the town
Right.
does this.
Yeah, we
time
absolutely
after
go
time
about
after time.
this and many of the projects, probably in the wrong order.
But isn't the issue before us whether or not we're going to support $71,530? Isn't that the request?
Yes.
And it's made up of 4 components, and one was a $6,600 base project deficit, which I think you've explained and justified, and I think I'm comfortable with.
Yep.
The next was the air conditioning piece, which I'm comfortable with. Then the next piece was this contingency, which I have not the same level of comfort, because as Peter has pointed out, there's already 15,000 set aside for contingency, so why would you need 31,000 of contingency?
It's not there.
the 15 that you set aside for the contingency last
not there.
year went towards a $30,000 insulation project that must have been originally estimated to be like 10,000.
Oh, I see.
It's
Yeah, I
gone.
think the number was like 20, right? I remember that kicked
Which one?
around. Installation.
Insulation.
Insulation, not installation.
29 and change.
No, that's what it came out, but I think we were thinking in our minds it's a 20-grand project, but
But we also,
maybe we didn't know.
but we added
might have.
20 grand to this from the green energy.
But that was
grant.
already accounted
That
for.
was
The 18 of
built
that was
into the
already
budget.
built into the budget. But we did add some. We had almost $3,000.
And although the contingency and the general contracting are built in, they don't exist right now. They're part of the shortage. They're
Yeah.
part of the 138, 100 and,
Now, I saw something from the engineers, okay, that had items we didn't have originally, okay? And it's this sheet, there's a whole, I don't know how it relates to whatever we're looking at here. But what does jump out at me, in each of the little categories on this sheet, it has 15% overhead and profit, which we had none of that.
well, that's,
It was buried in there, I presume. And they have a 15% contingency. So their percentages.
when an engineer's calculating a project, to get to the big number that we're talking about, inside of that, if you take all your components, you take all your labor components, you have to add in overhead and profit because they're a business. and you have to add in contingency, that's their contingency inside of their bid. That's not our contingency to cover that we knew what we were doing in the first place, or to finish a project for the unforeseen.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want
That's,
to belabor
so
it.
that's, that whole spreadsheet is the engineer just working up the number the first time we met, and we said, here's the scope we'd like to look at.
The way I look at this, we've got about 35 grand extra dollars needed for the project's original scope. And we need 36 grand for the air conditioning, which we'd be wise to do now as opposed to defer.
That's exactly how I'd like you to look at that.
That's 43,030.
Where do you get the 35 from, Peter? What are you counting?
I'm just doing 71,530 less 36,430 in my mind, and that doesn't mean my math's good. Right? Is that right?
Why would you deduct the,
71 minus 36.
why would you?
I'm just trying to get to the basic, yeah, gives me 35. So, in the original scope project that people approved last year, we're coming in 35 grand higher. And while we're at it, we might as well do the air conditioning, it's 36 grand. That's how I see it.
That's
Together, we got
the simplest, most straightforward way to look at it.
And I support it, you know, we still need to learn how we, you know, we need to use it as a teaching moment at some point.
Let me ask you a
learn
question.
from that.
We've got an item on for the HVAC. It's described as HVAC. It actually includes more.
That's right.
And the,
No, it doesn't.
well, it does. I mean, includes the base project plus the AC.
Right, which is all part of HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
Right, but it also includes this general contracting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a component of this project.
It is, okay, that's
It is.
That's what I understand.
It would have almost, I mean, it'd be worth going down there if we wanted to at some point, or I could meet you down there.
Yeah.
They're gonna tear that building apart to do this.
Right.
There's steam pipes that go
So
all
while
the way
they're
up to
doing
the
that, they're
attic.
gonna fix some stuff that needs fixing. Is
Well,
that what
no,
you're
they
saying?
have to literally rip the walls and ceilings apart,
Okay,
They have to do demo to get
And-
it done and then repair.
so someone has to do that. That's not
well, that
part
wasn't part of the bid.
of the bid. That's an HVAC contractor.
Gotcha.
The part that was never talked about, or the part that,
Is that
you know, there's some project management and contracting that needs to be done.
Yeah.
That's just always been there, it just hasn't been handled.
And just
Hence,
a-
there's a, you know, that's where, sorry.
And that's $11,000. That's 10,000 plus 1,000 of the contingency.
So just putting aside alternate one for the moment, okay? David, if we tried to do the job for 6,600, right? If you tried to keep on the base project and get it done by, you know, saving, robbing the Coke machine or something, right?
Right.
We still wouldn't be able to do the repairs.
And you wouldn't have any
And we
contingency.
wouldn't have any contingency.
That's exactly it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could not move back into that building.
And you would be bringing back the AC part of this for next
Understood,
year.
at a higher price.
Yeah.
After we already needed it, we were too late needing
What-
it.
And we should talk about that risk, which I somewhat
Before you
put
talk,
in there for you guys.
before we talk about that, what was the original estimate on like this alternate one? Because everybody seemed to be surprised that that was a much lower price than what they would have
For the
He's
predicted.
got the spreadsheet in front of him. I don't.
I have a spreadsheet in front of me that you gave me, this thing?
Can I see that?
You,
Do
absolutely.
you see it?
Just
Where
don't
it
mind
is?
my
No,
chicken
no.
scratch.
No, the engineering,
The engineer.
the engineering
Oh,
breakdown.
yeah.
That's-
It's, you know, I have a filing system going here.
There were several iterations of that.
I can't follow that one, sorry.
For the missing
I'm not a-
$1,000
I'm not a-
from the budget.
Yeah.
in the middle.
It's buried in there. That looks like that's
Well, is the,
You only got one
Oh.
page.
all I got, yeah.
Yeah. That,
But David, we would have thought it was less because of that offset, right? I mean, because of the small boiler versus big boiler thing? And we would have thought it was more? If you just-
all three of these numbers came in much lower. The engineer was surprised at how low they were. So we actually had to scour the references more than what we normally would have because they were so different from everybody else's
We
numbers.
really undersold reality last year when we got the approval for
You
150.
undersold reality plus, but you benefited from a surprisingly low estimate.
But
coming in.
we were assured this was the money that was needed to do the job.
Yeah.
Because we asked that question
Yes.
all the time when these projects come forward.
Well, I mean, I don't know how anyone could, I don't know where the estimates came from,
Understood.
but
But it wasn't from engineers.
it wasn't an engineer.
Yeah, and that's the one lesson that really jumps out, I think, because we hear that time and time again.
And that sheet that you were looking at there, it was the engineer's initial estimates of,
Okay.
you know, so he has to come up with a project total before we put it out to bid. And the only thing that the vendor would have seen was an estimated project of 200.
But any of these things that we're talking about really change the conclusion
No.
that we have to spend this money.
Right.
We have to spend the money because if we don't spend it now, we don't finish the first project and we don't take advantage
That's
of
right.
the opportunity with this add-on.
Yeah.
And therefore, it would be foolish not to spend the money. So this is more like an archaeological dig about where the bones are.
Well, but we had to
As
get to,
opposed
we
to-
had to dig a little ground to get to where we're comfortable with
See, the
what we're
problem
dealing
is,
with.
somebody's going to have to explain this at town meetings.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to
Yeah.
know how we got there.
Yeah, yeah. Let's put David up. He's tall, he's big.
I mean, up until today, you know, when Sean and I met today, I was still looking at the 43. It was the base project, had to cover that deficit plus alternate one. Because that's, the
I see.
contingency and the reserve
This is
for
the
the other
43 you're
repairs
talking
isn't
about.
really, you know, it's not my world. You do more about that
Yeah.
that was hanging out there.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think
right.
probably Sean's been saying it for several weeks, but
We weren't hearing you.
I
We're
was,
used to
yeah,
that,
I was saying
right.
it quietly, which is rare for myself.
But here's the thing, you could take a gamble and say, well, you don't need the contingency, we won't go for that money. And that's when you're gonna need the contingency and something,
Well, that would just prove that we didn't learn our lesson.
Can I make a suggestion also in terms of presentation? I think this is a misleading presentation. I think we actually have a higher base project deficit and a lower contingency, and I think it's going to be easier for people to understand if you present it that way. We appropriated whatever we appropriated last year. We didn't get that much done, and you add back in the contingency to this number, so it's whatever it is. It's 66, is
Yeah.
it 35?
we
Well,
spent
and
more last year because we used the
It's
contingency
not 35 because
already.
we already spent some out of that contract, but it's 10%
Yes.
of whatever's left over from that contract, it's 15, right, or 13. So, but I think we have to get to that presentation, because that's a lot easier to explain and understand. And that's what we've been struggling with here, is to figure that out.
Do you have questions? Yeah.
Didn't you say that we don't control the contingency? Didn't you say that 18.6 is his contingency that's built into his bid?
I thought you said the opposite.
No. In the spreadsheet, when the engineer, when we first hire the engineer, he works up, not his bid, he just works up a quick number. Here's what I think this is gonna cost you. And what he's doing is mocking up what a contractor's gonna do when he comes to bid. His internal numbers would include all his materials, his labor, and his profit and overhead, and his contingency.
Right, and that's not that 18.
That's not our contingency.
No, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, we don't, that's not something, isn't that part of?
No, what we're trying to hold on to here is that any capital project, I'm sure, in Sherborn, we have a contingency built in. Certainly, we should on any building.
Right.
That's just, and in business, Peter, you wouldn't do anything in business without a
So, but she's
contingency.
asking a good question, because that's a discretionary item.
Yeah, it sort of is.
Somewhat.
Unless
They came from the
we
same place.
go over and we can't finish the job because we don't have any funds there.
Right.
Right.
If you went to a
Or
supplemental
we
town
open,
meeting,
I mean,
you
this is
wouldn't need
a remodel job in a building, so we open the building and go, I can't believe they did that when they built this building. That's that money, so I don't have to come back to
So
advisory.
can you live with can we?
To fix it.
Here's the question, can we live with a contingency of 12 grand? Now I'm just trying to
Of course you-
package.
And-
the
Well,
thing.
and that was I quickly made that point the other day. You guys can choose to not, you can have no contingency if you want.
No.
I wouldn't be comfortable with the $10,000 I put in.
Here's what I'd like to see is 65 grand is the total nut, 35 or 36 being the air conditioning, and 30 grand for, the base project, including contingency, including repairs.
but here's the problem with that.
Okay.
So many times, we have projects that we think we funded, we all do our best efforts, Nobody's perfect. We all use our best estimates from the project team and for people who are familiar with it, and we're short. Then we have to go back to town meeting. So you put 65 in here, you're saying, okay, we're cut it short, but then do we want to have to go to the voters now for, this will be the third time on this project?
And frankly, we
This
won't.
point-
You know what'll happen, is the selectmen's budget is gonna eat that $6,000
All right, so-
on a
so-
repair that should have been capitalized.
So all it is how we,
Been
how
borrowed.
we, how we frame the descriptions here. For example, the 10,000 is really repairs.
So what it really is we've got a base deficit of 31,530.
Yeah.
We've got a alternate one of 36,430, and we've got a
air
contingent,
conditioning.
and we got a contingency of $3,643. And that'll take you to
The
the
whole thing.
71,530.
Yeah, that's a better way to, much
That's
better
fine,
way to
that's
present
fine.
it.
Wait, you just put a contingency of what?
I don't quite
The only
follow.
the only new contingency is the contingency for alternate one. You're already carrying a contingency on the rest of the project.
Of 15,600.
So your deficit is actually 31,500. Your alternate one is 36, and your contingency is about 3,600.
It's a bit of a shell game, but it
But
works.
it's easier to
Yeah,
understand for town meeting.
You just turn the numbers upside down on their heads. The bottom line is, the contract to the HVAC contractor is gonna cost us $174,858.
That's
Okay?
right.
Forget what we did last year. That's a real number.
Right, but we already appropriated part of his contingency.
Whatever you appropriate, it doesn't matter.
And we have 10,
The bottom line is, it's gonna cost $174,000.
And you get.
Somebody's gonna go in there and fix the walls, and I'm saying it's gonna cost $10,000.
so we're up to
I think you should hold on to
185,000.
18,000, and you only have 132,000 and change
Right, but the 18,000 you're hanging on to, Sean,
Already includes.
as a contingency.
that was part of the base project last year, too. So you already, your adjustment to base project isn't really $6,000. It's $30,000, because it includes the leftover.
You only have 132,500. Whatever you call it, it's 132,500.
Yeah, understood.
Doesn't matter where it came
We
from.
get to the same number.
Right.
It's just the new stuff looks more realistic this way. It looks like,
Why not make it an even 70?
whatever it is.
I think that anyone in the business world would say 10% of a project
Of
is
the
a
total
good contingency.
project,
Yeah, I don't have.
of the HVAC stuff, including alternate one, including, no, not including alternate one. Don't we need a contingency for that? Yes, we do.
Yeah, well, that's what
Combine
we're
them
doing.
all, the contingency of
what you're doing.
10% is
That's what I'm doing.
18,500.
36,430 is the
Yeah,
alternate one,
yeah.
3,600 is the contingency on that. You total those two up, you get,
Well, you need a contingency on that, too.
no, hang on a second. You total that up, you get $40,000. And then, you're right, because you already had the
You have
contingency
15,600 on a smaller amount.
on a smaller amount, so now you get another 3,000.
Yeah,
You end
So the
up
total-
close to that.
yeah. So I think that's what we ought to go with.
So why not go with 70,000? Nice round number.
Actually, Peter, you know why you don't need the full contingency there? You only need 600, because the rest of it is contingency. The rest of that is contingency plus the 10,000.
Yeah.
So you don't need a full contingency.
No,
on
I'm
that. You
just
need another
using his
1,600,
mindset, right? If the project, original
I'm just
stuff-
telling you, you got a $184,000 project,
Yeah,
right now.
I think we got.
Going forward, we have a $184,000
Including
project,
alternate
We
one?
got the same place.
including alternate one.
yeah, then we're at the same place.
It's this
Yeah,
number,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how.
which I
Yeah.
gave you guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Any way you look
We
at
got
it.
there, we just.
So one big contingency,
We went there a different way.
10%, right.
Yeah, so how we package it, we can think about that, but the number still gets us to the 71,530, and the question is whether we can live with something less. I think everybody gets, you have to have a 10% contingency, that's what we're asking for. It's a precise number based
Yeah.
on
Right.
engineered
And-
and bid proposed
Right,
numbers.
we're talking about a number
Hard
that's on a
numbers.
contract, that's ready to be signed.
So we have hard numbers. The only soft number, besides the contingency, which is good practice, is the 10,000 in repairs. That's a
Exactly.
soft number.
Which is a little scary, because last year was a
Yes.
higher number.
Yeah.
And so, are we underestimating that 10,000? Do we need more than 10,000?
You need the 18,500 in contingency, and the 10,000's fine.
Okay. All right.
Because you could argue, Paul, going to 75.
Well, what Sean's saying is he's comfortable if
I
we have the
understand.
10,000,
Yeah.
so. Why don't we go for 72?
Shy of having someone go and
Some round
bid
number
every
would be
piece that's gonna
72
get torn
or
apart.
71, I
Well, I
would
was suggesting 70
70.
because, A,
think.
it's a
70,
round
you're
number.
cutting the contingency out, some of the
Right.
contingency
It's
out.
$1,000.
Okay, so you have an 8% contingency.
Mary?
I just have one question. How much is left from the original that we appropriated?
131,
Let me give you this.
131, okay, okay.
Is it 131?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Out of the 153.
yes.
This is how I looked at it.
Did you look at?
Well, David did that.
Okay,
Hi, Barbara.
okay.
This is
We'll get
what
to
the
you
contract's
very
gonna cost with
quickly.
the.
Barbara, you got here for the math portion of our program.
I was told there'd be no math.
With all this. We just
Yeah,
said,
well, I can tell you,
I've always said we need that.
all right, well, do you have a sense, do you have any preference on the, I'm happy with the precise number. I'm
That's
happy
what we
with
have right now.
70,
You
I'm
just said
happy
it's
with
130.
rounding
So you're
up.
taking the straight.
I'd rather
No,
round up a
David,
little.
what do you think? Round up?
What happened to this 18?
We used,
Yeah, round
I
up.
would- I
That's
would put
because
this in as
I
a
keep
big
getting
number.
burned. And,
it's already
you know,
calculated.
this project came out 6,600.
Can you live with that?
Michael would
Seventy-two.
show.
Yeah, I'll take a motion for
This year.
72, where we support this article
At
at $72,000. I'll take a motion for
I'm
that.
so moved.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Just under discussion. If the money's not used, it's
Comes back.
comes back.
Right.
And if we under budget and we don't have enough money, then we gotta go find the money
Here
somewhere.
we are again. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's better,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I do want to point out that it's, you know, I wasn't there the other day. Like, I mean, I just wanted to complete that base project, that bid.
No,
and
no,
then
this is part of the process to get
try-
to where we
Right,
are.
and then Sean convinced me about the good business sense of covering alternate one if we're going to have to do it anyway. And then the rest of it, contingency and reserve, was something I hadn't even
Yeah,
thought of.
yeah, okay.
So that's how I
Yeah,
got
so
there.
that's great. It's great that we got to the right place in a reasonably timely manner, because advisory's meeting next Wednesday night, and they'll know the position we've taken, which is now, all those in favor.
and this is borrowable money.
Yeah.
So the idea would be to borrow it, so it'll have very little impact this year on the balanced budget.
So I have one question.
What?
One?
Well, this can't be done until after the vote on the exempt debt.
The
The ballot
at town
question.
meeting.
At
But we
town
have it-
meeting and
the
then
ballot
at the ballot.
question.
Yeah,
That's right,
okay.
that's right. Does that, because we got people waiting, in the well.
I just
that's
need to,
reality.
I need to tell him how many days it is. I'm sure his bid was good for 90 days or something like that, so.
Well,
It's just he's not going to be starting
It is what it
soon.
is.
It's only 6 weeks.
Right, I just want to get him the information.
When do we vote?
It would have to be approved at annual town meeting, and then we'd have the ballot vote as well.
What day is that?
Ballot item, yeah.
So it has to be appropriated April 29th, this town meeting.
Yeah.
Can't do anything until you get it appropriated there.
No, when's the election?
And then that's
the vote. When's the election?
May 10th, maybe?
It doesn't have the date.
The first week is the first,
First week of May, give or take a couple of
Yeah.
days.
that would be Tuesday the
He-
6th.
Pushing it.
He can get you she can get you the
Yeah,
actual date.
no, he'll
I can
handle
look
it.
at my
We're
calendar.
just,
I have my calendar here on
we're pushing it. We got to pull the trigger fast after that.
And if it gets voted down, we still,
If it gets voted down, we're looking for a place, if anyone's got a heated barn, or a couple of fire trucks with a bunch of water in them. It might help your rating if we house fire trucks on your farm.
Now, fear is not going to help here.
It's worth pointing out, especially while Mary's still here, the risk with not doing the air conditioning is that the contractor could finish his job and be ready to run off the equipment and not be able to run it off. And we'll be forced into a change order. Because he won't even be able to, A, we won't have air conditioning, B, he won't be able to run the equipment off. Well, I don't know that we'd even have a choice. And it'd be an emergency expenditure, and a change order would not be, we wouldn't like the number.
All right,
Thanks, guys.
thanks a lot.
thanks, Sean.
You helped us make a confusing thing less confusing.
I hope so.
All right.
Thanks for all your volunteer work here. We know that you're not the
Great.
guy who was putting all this together originally, and you got drafted into this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, too.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. You to me. Okay, so we might as well, any other thoughts on advisories, public hearing, or any of that sort of thing? Otherwise, we might as well do the ballot.
It was very well run. It was good discussion.
Did we find out on the, that citizens article where there was a 4-4 vote? What, the approach taken that you decided on, was that the right approach? Yes. So it's a no action,
No, no, no,
no.
no.
That's what I thought the approach taken
No.
was.
The, no, the motion for favorable action failed.
Yes,
That is not the same
as a no action.
as a no action.
Okay, but it
But
failed.
That's a big distinction,
Yep.
Okay.
big distinction. And so there will be there will be no, recommendation
Okay,
by advisory. There will be 2 reports in the report to the town. One will be the opinion of those who were favoring
Understood.
favorable action. There will be a report from the people who were favoring no action, but there will be no.
and what will your motion be at town meeting?
We will not make the motion at town meeting. Someone else will make the motion.
Like
A citizen?
a citizen?
Or, yes, it will have to be citizen. It will have to be.
Wow.
Or maybe the planning board.
Yeah, it could be either the planning board, perhaps one of the petitioners.
Yeah.
And the motion would be either take favorable action or not take favorable
As they determine. We won't be making it.
action. Okay,
But it should be clear to everybody that the failure of the motion is not the same as recommending.
No
the
action.
opposite of-
So
understood.
what's the protocol on making the motion? Are we going to have 20 people rushing up to the microphones so they can make the motion?
No, I think Cory is working on
Because there may be people who would be anxious to make a no-action
that. Oh,
motion,
I'm
for
sure there
example.
would be.
Yeah.
So that will be all settled before town meeting.
Okay, good. All right, so shall we talk about our
Ballot questions?
ballot questions? Thank you.
Because that's what we really should get
You
out the
gotta nail
door.
that, right? Yeah.
Sooner rather than later, and not wait till
Looking
the
at here.
deadlines
I'm
are
looking
at
at
hand.
this thing.
Okay, gotcha.
It says draft on
But
it.
these all contemplate capital, right?
These are all capital ballot question items.
But not all of them are capital according to advisory, right?
They're all capital.
They're all
it's just
capital.
that some of them.
I'm sorry, they're not,
borrowed and
right,
some
they're
of them
they're not all
paid.
ballot questions is what I'm saying.
Correct.
Oh, the listing here, that's right.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
some of them are ballot questions where there's a yes or no. So the ones that are not being paid for are free cash that require debt exclusion override.
All ballot questions are yes or no. Voters don't write numbers in
Yeah.
on the ballot. They have to either vote yes or they vote no.
So,
Got it, okay.
But before we get to the individual ones, there was a decision made here, I guess by Barbara or maybe by the town administrator, that there would be a variety of separate ballot questions rather than one comprehensive ballot question. And
Yep.
each year, we've had this debate, are you better off having one question that has everything in there, or are you better off having 5, 6, whatever the number of questions are, with each particular project on its own? And to sort of summarize the arguments, both sides, because every board has debated it for the last 20 years, is if you have a single question, projects don't compete against each other, they reinforce each other. So if you're in favor of any one of them, you go and you vote for all of them. And the argument against it is that there are many voters who don't favor all the projects, and they say that they want to be able to cherry pick and just support, for example, the school projects tend to have quite a constituency. They'll come and vote for those, but want to be able to vote no on other projects. So the first thing I think we should decide is, do we want to combine these questions? And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. It doesn't have to be one question for everything. And you can have, like you can group, let's say the CM&D
Yeah.
trucks and the whatever vehicles that might be purchased into one question. You can maybe put the schools, all the schools into one question.
How can you put the schools into one question if the region's a very different situation entirely? Is it not?
Well, they're both capital improvements,
Well, they are, but
they're different stuff.
One's just an IMA, there's a different payment structure, but, well, my take, Paul, on that, last year, we did do the lump and all together, maybe we had the schools separate, I can't remember exactly. My instincts were that I preferred as a voter, I would have preferred individuals, but we did what we did last year. There are some good reasons why. I will say that nobody came up to me afterwards and said, I'm glad we had that one question to answer on the ballot. All of the comments I got were, why did you have this one question? Why didn't you break them out? So
But the answer is, it passed.
I-
When you break it out,
Yeah, but I had
odds are,
complaints.
some are not going to pass.
Yeah, my point is, I only heard complaints about that approach. Yes, they all passed. So I'm more tended to think I like breaking them out, but, you know,
So, I mean, I've heard both of these, and I guess it occurs to me, we've cut a lot of fat. We've tried to be really careful with all these ballot questions, which makes it less acceptable, I guess, to think that one of these won't pass, because then the answer is, well, what do we do? In fact, several of these questions are questions that are actually intended to save the town money, like the fuel monitoring, which is not the most intuitive question, but if you understand what it is, it's something I think we would need to do, right? I mean, that's, so, I'm not saying I'm headed towards one question, but it may make sense to combine at least some of these questions in that way.
The one question that people have expressed strong views to me about is the fire truck. It's a big ticket item, it's large dollars, it's, I think, the largest amount of all the questions.
Yep.
If you lump the fire truck in with the schools, everybody who comes out for the schools has to vote for the fire truck. That, the history of ballot questions in Massachusetts says that one question is more likely to pass than menu questions. Menu questions will always be something awry. But you don't have to do one question versus 10 questions. You really can do 3 questions. or
Well,
4
the
questions.
lumping may make sense. I think we owe it to the voters to break out a few of these things, rather
fire
than
truck
us
in
decide, yes, and rather than us making the decision that if we put them all together, they'll have to vote yes. Let's
I'm
give
also
them
a little
choice.
concerned with the fire truck question, that there's enough feeling potentially against that it could, compromise the school questions if they were combined. So, maybe it does make sense to at least carve out the fire truck as a single item.
So we
That's
could do the, how about this then? Let's just think about it. If we did the fire truck, if we combine the C&D items, which is really just the
The dump truck?
dump truck and the fuel accounting software, okay? Combine those two.
Okay.
And then we're into Pine Hill and the regional school.
What about the police? What are you doing with the police?
Free
That's-
cash.
That's free cash,
cash.
gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if we're able, and Barbara may be able to help us on lumping Pine Hill with the regional or keeping them separate, I can go either way on that. The outlier is what we do with the HVAC replacement.
That
It's
kind
an
of
extra
goes along with the
70 grand.
Pine Hill and the school stuff, though. It's all capital improvement with fixing up our buildings.
It's all buildings.
Yeah,
That regional's gotta get a Dover vote too, hasn't
Yeah.
yes.
But if we vote for it,
So you might want to keep that separate.
it doesn't matter, because they're not voting in our town, so however we come out, they gotta have a separate vote.
So your idea is the Pine Hill capital projects, the
Fire department
HVAC.
capital project and the regional
Regional
school
school
capital
capital
lumped
projects.
together. Okay, I can do
Yeah.
that. I can do that. I think that's good thinking.
Yeah, I think, I mean,
Yeah,
it's always hard to.
so that would put us at 3 questions.
You have, one question is just line 1,
Yes.
and then the next one would be line 3 and 4,
Yeah.
and then the other one is lines
7, 8, 9.
Good.
That works. I like that.
I move that we combine 3 questions, we have lines 3 and 4 combined, we have lines 7, 8, and 9 combined, and we keep line 1 as a separate question.
Yeah, for Barbara's information, there was some that we were going to do with free cash. That included the transfer station, the police command vehicle,
I think Barbara drafted this, didn't she?
and,
Yes.
yeah, one of them you had down as a debt exclusion.
That has been changed.
That's
You should have had an updated version.
Yeah, she had a bad model
Well, my version's not updated.
Okay, well,
in your packet.
That's what I took.
Yeah, there were, I think I've got 2 or 3 versions of this
I think
during
I
the
got
day.
the right one.
Yeah, you did get, but that's the final one.
This is the final one, I happened to luckily pull the final one.
Right, so we've identified it's line 1, line 3, line 4, line 7, line 8, and line 9 are the only debt exclusion capital items.
and 2, 5, and 6 are free
2,
cash.
5, 6 are free
Can you
cash.
keep that in your
your updated one does have 2, 5, and 6 as free cash.
Which
But the
would be
first version was incorrect.
the command vehicle for the police
Okay, I
department.
was working off the wrong,
Farm
that
pond
was what
management
was in my
plan.
packet.
Yeah.
But the number for farm pond
Change,
management is
yeah,
24.5, just for this thing. The transfer station, free cash 65.
Should we also fill in the number on the fire construct, the HVAC?
Yes,
since have
now
the
we
number?
do. Yep, 72,000 is what we voted on.
So I'll amend my motion to add the number 72,000 on the HVAC.
Second.
Okay, so the motion has been amended and seconded. Any further discussion on what we're doing on the ballot questions?
Well, that's not, you don't put the number on the ballot question.
Anyway,
So you put the number into the appropriations town meeting. For debt exclusions, there's interest costs, there's all kinds of stuff.
right.
So you only,
So
You
the
just
ballot,
exempt it.
the ballot questions are really the parts that start shall the town of Sherborn. That's the ballot question.
Right.
In each one.
This is the motion.
And the other part is the motion. Yeah.
So I guess I'll correct my amendment to say we're filling in 72,000 on the motion.
a second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Right.
So,
3 questions.
And the annual town election is Tuesday, May 13th.
so we need Barbara to combine the questions, I guess,
Yeah.
and then
Next meeting, we'll take a final approval of that.
Of what the
To give
election
it
warrant actually looks like, is that what you're saying?
yeah, to get this on the ballot, it has to go 35 days before the election. So when is it going to be to the,
It has to be the town clerk by April 8th.
April 8th, so
So
next week's meeting will
We
cover
have
us,
to do it.
which is Thursday, the 3rd.
April
That's
3rd.
actually, it's fixed on this agenda.
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
All right,
Just
great. Yes, Pat, I'm sorry.
Just a point of information, just a clarification. If one of those fails at town meeting and is in the group, then the ballot question.
Ballot question remains, as I understand it.
Remains
It's just that
same,
people, when they
same.
say yes or no, it's on the remaining items that were approved.
Right, but it won't matter whether the ballot question is approved or not. If it fails at town meeting, doesn't that?
Well, if there's more than one item in the ballot question. it
That's
will.
There's more than one item in the ballot question, but what I'm saying is if one of them fails at town meeting, then whether the ballot question, if the ballot question is approved, it still doesn't
It doesn't pass,
pass.
that's correct.
I just
We had
wanted
that
to
issue
clarify
years
that.
couple years
ago
ago.
We've had it,
with the
right.
Pine Hill access road.
Right.
Because there's an issue of getting to the printer and all that kind of
No,
stuff.
I understand. I just wanted to clarify that for
Yeah.
those who. yeah.
Good. All right,
Thank you.
Barbara?
Very
always a
efficient.
pleasure. Thanks a lot. Okay, so we have a meeting coming up What else do we have here? We have no warrant tonight. I lost my draft of next week's.
Because we're on every other week, why do we have no warrant?
Because we're on every other week.
It's not great. This
awesome.
is the first time.
It's the second time.
Second time?
Yeah.
So that means that we can, at some point,
We'll ease
after
off.
town meeting,
After
particularly
town
during the
meeting.
summer,
Yeah.
maybe go to twice
Every other
a
week.
month.
Sure.
I'm going to bring
And we
you,
can have Hawaiian shirt day too, so that we can.
Wear whatever
You
you
can
think
supply
you
the
want to
Hawaiian
wear,
shirts.
Mike.
I'm going to bring you a whole calendar for the upcoming year and start plugging in when you want
Great.
people coming in
Perfect.
or what, and the routine things.
Good. Now, Diane, I know you so we have no warrant. Upcoming meeting, you handed me a draft agenda, and somehow in this pile of
Yeah, you can give that back.
garbage, I lost it.
You hand that to
Sure.
Oh, I have it. I stuck it with the,
Are we on selectmen reports? What are we doing now?
yeah, we can do selectmen reports. Do we have any selectmen reports?
Well, we just had that issue about the advisory meeting on Pulte, which they'd asked one of the selectmen to attend.
Oh, there you go, yes. Yeah.
And I think I would not be available.
I'm not available either.
I am available. I'm okay to go. I'd like to know a bit more, but if you're not comfortable having someone from us, I wouldn't go speaking on behalf of the selectmen. I wouldn't go except to answer specific questions. I would go out of courtesy to being asked by the COA. I know that the planning board, I went to their meeting last night. I know that a representative from the planning board will be going. I don't know what other groups are planning to go. So this is still a little in flux of what it is they're trying to do.
That was what concerned me, I guess, a little about the announcement was I think it's a great idea to have more information out there and for, you as a representative of the board, or frankly, if we could all do it and we're
Post it.
available to do it, to go and see what's said because more information is always better and it sounds like the project's evolving.
Yes.
But I guess I would not be comfortable if the point of this was to try to pin down either board positions or to, and I don't mean that I think you would say anything out of line, Peter, whether we agree or not on this. It's just that I think it's inappropriate to have that kind of a session with board representatives who opine like that.
So would it be fair for us to get more information from the board we appoint, the COA, what it is they're planning to do?
I'd be very
And
cautious
discuss.
about your taking any position.
Well,
First,
so if you're uncomfortable,
If
us
you
being there.
recall, they haven't, to my satisfaction, haven't nailed down in writing in a way that will be enforceable a lot of the provisions. So there's like a dialogue going on based on the
Today.
assumption that the things that are being said are real. But I know from a lawyer, I mean, I had this situation with, as I started to talk about, the New England Patriots, where they did a flyer and they passed it out at a town meeting, and it had all these statements in it. For years, I've been trying to get them to do what they put in the flyer. But they said, if you wanted that stuff, why don't you put it into an agreement?
Yeah.
It's just a flyer. It was information about what could happen, but it's not a commitment that it will happen. Yet people are making decisions based on what could be happening, not what actually could happen. So I think that from my perspective, the town needs to move in a direction of specifying exactly what this project is. And that's what the voters should be voting on, not a whole range of arguments about what it could be, what it might be.
But based on what I saw at the planning board last night, that's the direction they're headed in. So they are getting to the preliminary plan that's nailed down with all of the elements, and in the plan, they are including the things that the Foxborough Flyers, or the wherever it is Flyers, the Patriots Flyers, they put those items in, but the planning board did request that they have separately an agreement of sorts. And so all that I would expect will be voted on by the planning board. They've kept their hearing open, they're meeting again next week.
Did the planning board make any decision about the distance? I'd heard that that was an issue that they might.
Yeah, they were happy with the 1 mile.
It's within 1 mile?
Yes, they measured that, they said it fits the zoning laws. Yep. So anyway,
That's
all
great.
your points
Those
are very well made, and I think they took them to heart in the planning board and are pushing that. And I think the Pulte folks who were here sitting at that table last night listened as well.
I don't know if Karen might have a better idea of what's being proposed here.
Karen's here.
Hey, how are you, gentlemen?
Good. We've got reluctance on the part of the board to have any one of us attend the COA session on Pulte, not knowing exactly what you're doing and trying to be sure we don't get put on the spot.
Can I give you a quick?
Please do, if you want to. You just came to say hi.
I did. I just came to wave to all my friends. But I'm always happy to be here. Basically, it's an informational session. We have asked representatives of the Conservation Committee, the Board of Health, the Planning Board, and any other board in town which would touch a project like this to come and answer questions from people from the audience. We are not asking anyone to give a thumbs up or thumbs down. This is not an opportunity for people to endorse the project. It is strictly an informational session for people who have not been able to attend any of these meetings to come out and get their questions answered.
Will Pulte people be there as well,
The
presumably?
Pulte people will be there as well. We are only taking written questions.
And
This
who
is-
is the moderator? Do we know? Do you have a moderator, or how's that going to work?
What's going to happen is we are going to get written questions, and then I'm going to read the written questions.
Sure.
And then what is going to happen is, if it's directed to the Board of Selectmen, you'll answer it. If it's a planning board question or issue, we're having the experts come and answer the questions.
And how is the response to your invites so far?
They have not gone out in the mail. They're going to be dropped in the mail. They're at the printers now.
Of the various boards. Do you have commitments of attendees by various boards so far?
I believe we have a Concom commitment. I'm not 100% sure. I'm talking with John Higley. He's willing to send someone. He wants to make sure he
Yeah, I was at
sends
their
the
meeting.
right
I think they're
person.
planning to send somebody.
I believe the Board of Health is coming as well.
And I guess, so my concern, I guess, still stands, which is that it sounds like the request can be made for a Board of Selectmen question. I think it just needs to be clear that you're one citizen, and if you want to answer it, or if it's something
No, I
that
understand.
concerns the finances of the town, it's appropriate for you to answer it, but just that people understand that we haven't ever taken a stand as a board on this.
No, I understand.
Nor do we want you to or expect you to at that meeting. The assessors will also be
They
there.
need to be comfortable, like, I'm available that evening, these gentlemen are not.
I'm not available.
They want to be
Another
comfortable that I'm not saying something to represent the Board of Selectmen as a whole, and I don't plan to do that. And hopefully I will answer questions without giving answers.
I mean, yeah, it's Peter's less a comfort with what you would do than what people would perceive.
That's
actually.
correct, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so we will, I mean, if they object, if you guys object, I won't go, I'll sit in the cheap seats.
I'm excited to hear that there's an agreement they're putting together. And at
Yes.
some point, I hope the agreement comes
Yes.
here so we
And
can,
they even put on the table mitigation funds.
yes, to deal with it.
For a modest amount,
Why must?
for a modest amount that was not pleasing to the planning board, nor would it be pleasing to us, I'm sure.
Well,
So,
I won't
that's-
ask what it was, but.
No, but that's to be
No.
discussed, yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is that at some point, if they get an agreement and it's signed, or before it's signed, it might make sense for it to come here.
Yeah.
That,
Right.
you know,
For
maybe we can make
execution.
suggestions, maybe there's things that we could see. I mean, I've done many of these,
Yeah.
so maybe I could add some value, maybe not. Maybe Mike has done a few of these. So I think we could add value if it came here.
Yeah.
Right. So Karen, just a sort of more general question. This is a particular forum concerning the Pulte project, but and I know Council on Aging has taken a pretty strong stand on this.
Mhm.
Is there an effort underway within Council on Aging or anywhere else that you know to identify other sites in town for 55 and up housing? I mean, is this an all the eggs in one basket situation, or are people thinking about other places that might make sense for this kind of housing?
We were not charged with coming up with an appropriate site. That was the job of the Financial Enhancement or Financial Revenue Committee.
Well, that's debatable too, but.
Okay, well, what we did was, this was presented to us. We felt it had merit, just like we felt the Abbey Road project had merit. And we felt it was, our mission is to find housing for our seniors to help them remain in town. And we felt that this was meeting our mission, and that's why we supported it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, so I was asking, given the controversy over this particular project, whether there has been or could be an effort to identify places that might be less controversial where projects like this might go forward, either in addition to the Pulte project, or if the Pulte project fails instead of the Pulte project. I mean, there seem to be a lot of people on the council who are very interested in this topic, and I think there's a lot of interest generally in town on the revenue front and on the fact that we have an aging population just demographically. It would make sense to have some of those discussions. I think those discussions are being drowned out a little at this point by the Pulte project, but it's a more general question, I guess, and I just
Well,
raised
I
that
think-
as an issue.
Sure, and I think, after town meeting, whatever decision is made, I think the board will certainly look forward to working with whatever committee, whether it's the Revenue Enhancement or whether it's the Board of Selectmen, to keep senior housing on the burner for this town.
Good.
All right, so hopefully we will see Peter Monday, the 7th.
And you're
At
seeing
7
me,
p.m.
and you're seeing me next Friday morning?
I will. Here's yet another plug,
You might as well
breakfast with
stay
the
over for the
Selectmen.
weekend, too. I mean,
Wow.
it's just, you'd be there Friday and
Just
Monday.
Right, exactly. So we'll see you
Sandwich
Friday
weekend.
morning,
Yes.
right here. Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
You good with selectmen reports then?
That was the only thing I
That's
had
the
on
only-
there.
Yeah, glad you reminded me.
Do you get bacon and eggs with these breakfasts? Because I just get
I get
crumb.
lukewarm coffee at the end.
Oh, it's great coffee. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I just want to circle back real quick, sorry, on the previous discussion of the warrant articles. So we've pushed forward on the capital item for the fire department HVAC, and Mary's witness to that whole process. And your hearing is still open for Wednesday night, is that correct? Or did you close it?
Close the hearing.
Okay. So I don't know how you will handle that at this stage of the game.
Handle what?
Just the number being filled in now.
We put a number in, you took no action on that, as I report.
That is correct. We can choose to leave our vote, or we can re-vote.
So you're likely to hopefully you'll discuss what we put forth here this evening at your next meeting. Okay, before your write-up. And the other part is you took no action, and the question is on the veterans thing, Paul, that's what I just wanted.
Right, and I've had some conversation with the town administrator and with the assistant town administrator about putting together a program that the selectmen can consider. One of the concerns, it seems to me providing this abatement program for veterans is a bit of a no-brainer. But as you heard at the hearing, there were several objections. One was, there's 173 veterans in town, and if all 173 take advantage of it, that's 173,000.
Yep.
And so they are talking to other communities and hopefully coming together with a policy and a program that we can bring here and we can talk about, which would probably include like a cap of like no more than
$5.
$5.
Yeah, or per people or whatever. Yeah.
Or dollars.
Yeah.
And other aspects. There was a suggestion made there be a means test. We ought to talk about that. So I understand that David is going to be proposing that for April
10th.
April
April
10th,
10th, okay.
to have a
So
discussion.
still
with the
before
board.
town meeting, if in fact somebody wanted to try to do something.
Yeah.
Well, was the idea to do a special town meeting, or is that,
No.
because it's not on the warrant, or is on the warrant?
It is on the warrant.
Okay, good.
So
Good.
we could
So we don't
still
need to
keep
do a
it
special.
alive
Yeah, good.
on the floor.
Anybody can make a motion to adopt it.
Good.
And
Um,
avoid a special town meeting.
Yeah.
So both these items can be dealt that way if need be.
Hey, David, on
So
that,
we won't, I'm not, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, wait, if you're, you said the 10th? You're,
Yes.
On what Paul, on this veterans
yeah,
thing.
yeah, so, I mean.
That would be town meeting floor. You guys won't.
Because we're done
Yeah,
before that.
but if you can squeak in the HVAC thing for the fire department,
I
it's
guess,
possible, but that's asking, I understand that's asking a lot
yeah,
at
it will.
this stage of the game.
No, well, besides that, I actually had a question for Paul, because you mentioned the other night about we don't need to reopen a hearing on whatever, as long as we don't hear new information, and I'm just wondering that we could just revote something.
Yes, you can always revote.
So, but this is new information, now we have a number. Does that count?
Well, I think you heard, you had a hearing on the subject and you heard the information that was available then. Now you have a new number.
Right. So that doesn't count as new information for which we have to reopen the hearing on that. Is that correct? That's what I'm trying to find out. I just want to make sure we.
I don't think you need to reopen a hearing to take a number.
But if you're, to be fully comfortable, because we don't want Paul on the spot for legal advice, you might want to check with town
Yeah,
council.
I will. And
Just
I
to
had-
satisfy
I
yourself.
had that on my brain, and I told her, when she was done, I wanted to ask her. And she came down and she
That's all
said,
right.
what do you want to do? And I couldn't remember, but now I do.
Now you got it.
So
All
I'll be
right.
in touch with you.
So David, on this, the veterans tax abatement, and I raised some questions the last time about the senior tax abatement. I think there's a bigger question, not putting aside the warrant article for a minute and the program. I think we need to make sure we're doing the senior tax credit correctly, and that there's somebody in town, and I know the assessors are aware of it and implement it, but I'm not sure anybody's sort of watching the logistics and the niceties of the law and making sure that they are touching all the bases in doing it. We would hate to be in a situation
I did check into
where
it.
someone would take issue with that.
I did check into
Okay.
it, and the issue for the senior tax program is that the town of Sherborn didn't adopt the statute.
That's right.
They adopted a homegrown program. And the Internal Revenue Service has taken the position that those programs are fully taxable. It's the same thing as having a municipal job.
Right, and we handle it that way. That's my understanding,
That's
is we
what
handle
we
it that
do.
way.
So the town of Sherborn is now followed suit after a number of communities were whacked with penalties and interest and all of that for not doing it. Sherborn does the withholding, makes people pay taxes on that
Mhm.
program. So one of the conclusions that I would suggest to you is that an abatement program that nets $8 an hour is probably a better deal than a homegrown program that pays $10 an hour, which people have to pay 25–30% taxes on. So their actual senior program, actual take-home pay is less than the abatement that the
It could be, but then that begs the question, why don't we do it the way the statute says? I mean, I'm not sure, Paul, and maybe you have more certainty on this than I do. We adopted that program apparently before the state statute took effect, and then we decided not to adopt the state statute. Does the state statute's terms preempt what we had as a
No.
local program?
No, and we didn't do it before the state statute took effect.
Well,
We were aware of the state statute when we adopted the homegrown
we
version.
rejected that state statute only a few years ago, I believe.
The reason why we did a homegrown program is that the state statute requires minimum wage. And
That's
we
right.
wanted to pay $10
And that's what
an
I'm
hour.
concerned about. So when did
That's all gonna be
we do that homegrown program? Many years ago.
5–6 years ago.
All right, so that's the kind of information I'm hoping to get, just so we know that it sounds like I've gotten 15 different answers from everybody I've talked to, and sometimes multiple answers from the same people, so I just, I think we ought to line our ducks up. It's not with regard to the merits of the warrant article, Paul, it's just it's sort of prudence to make sure we revisit it. And I also wonder if we are empowered to develop a program. We ought to be developing a program in coordination with each other, so we've got, more efficient administration of these programs. If the veterans program is going to take effect, it's time to revisit the senior program and make sure we've got the programs lined up as much as it's feasible and appropriate to do.
Well, my fear about that is it took a lot of work to get the senior program, and I don't want to see suddenly some of the more negative-minded people in town decide, let's get rid of that program.
Well, my understanding is we are empowered to administer that program, is that right?
Right, the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so if we administratively decide we want to do something a little different with it, I guess we're allowed to do that.
No, to adopt a statute, only town meeting can do that.
I'm not talking about adopting a statute, I'm talking about within the four corners of what we've already got adopted, whatever that is, because I wasn't able to find it in our bylaws.
It's not a bylaw, it was a vote of town meeting,
Okay, then that's another,
basically an appropriation.
that's another point, maybe something to talk to the town clerk about, but we ought to have those things, if not in the bylaws codified, they ought to be in our book. And that book should be updated as to, anything we've done more recently than,
But that's the beauty of accepting a
2011.
statute. It's there, it's permanent, it's the same across the whole state. And the beauty of having programs that are the same across state is that if somebody wants to move to Sherborn, who's a veteran, and this makes a difference to him, or if he, lives in another community but inherits his mother's property in Sherborn and comes here, he's got the lack of uniformity isn't good for the market value of properties, the retention of people in the community, and most of all, this is intended to help people. And if people get familiar with a program that's basically a statewide program, and here we've got something that's different, maybe they get excluded here where they're eligible everywhere else. It doesn't work. What's wrong with, it's like like having somebody tailor-make a suit for you versus buying one off the rack. Why not get the suit off the rack? It's standard. And I know that at the state level, we spend a lot of energy with a lot of lawyers to try and address all the tax issues and everything else on this veterans program. It was done after the senior program. A lot of effort was put in by the administration to have a good program. Why would we want to have 351 different programs all around the state? We're much better off just having the same program.
I don't
Same thing
disagree-
with the
I don't
senior
disagree with
program.
you, but it sounds like, from the standpoint of the senior program, with that train came and went, so.
Yeah, it sounds like you're, it sounds like Mike's hung up on what we're doing now until he can get some comfort with what we're doing now and understanding. It's hard for him to
Yeah, and it's not even that, it's not even whether it's hard for me to back
embrace
this.
this. Yeah.
It's really a separate question
Yes,
altogether. It just
I
as
think
a
it is.
matter of prudence,
Yeah.
we've got this program that we're in charge of administering that nobody, on our staff seems to know the exact facts about, and we've got lots of questions. So David, if you could just do a little report with all the relevant information, then we have it.
Right.
Whether it's at the 10th or whether it's at another meeting, just to have that discussion and see if we want to do something different, if we want to do the same thing. And by different, I don't necessarily mean adopting the statute, I mean tweaking the program if it's warranted to tweak the program. It's a pretty well-used program, I guess. Maybe we could make it more well-used if that's appropriate, I don't know.
But in the meantime, by the 10th, we'll have information also on the article.
Well, I don't want taking care of 173 veterans being held hostage to,
Well, I thought you said it was 5 veterans, you were down to 5.
well, that might be the cap.
Okay, all right.
But there's 173 veterans in town. And we owe them a great debt of gratitude. We're here because and we have this form of government because of what they did. And as I try to indicate at the advisory hearing, we owe them something. So we ought to do this program. If there are problems with other programs, we ought to fix those programs. And we ought to tweak those
I agree with you, we
programs.
should fix those programs if there are problems. We need to know if there are problems.
But I
And
wouldn't
we need to
hold
figure
one
out-
hostage to the other.
Well, I didn't say the word hostage, Paul, you're bringing that in.
All right, well, I think we
Try to
got
get
a
it
sense of
done.
where we're going.
Yeah, well, we'll try to get it done for the 10th, if not, then.
Yeah,
later.
that's sometime afterwards, right?
But this is on the agenda for the 10th.
Yeah, in any case, it's in town meeting's hands now, too, so it's.
That's
not-
correct, so we
It's
can.
my hostage-taking efforts failed, so.
There you go. All right, so we're looking at what looks to me like a fairly exhaustive agenda here.
You want me
for
to
the
break it up?
third. So we might want to, well, you got a new concept introduced, annual review at the BOS. Now, we had established that we want to meet with these various committees, and some I would put on the higher priority list than others. But what I
That may
look
not be
at
possible.
is, what's real important is the consideration of Public Safety Committee. That's the big item. And so you're thinking, well, while we're at it, because some of these other committees might be impacted by that, they ought to be here or something, I don't know. So that's just something that we might want to think a little bit further.
Well, I had the capital project update, and those
Oh, I see.
two,
Because they were doing
yeah,
something?
they've been dealing with that Western Avenue intersection
All
thing,
right.
and it's kind of hung up.
Well, can you do it with just the traffic safety?
This is like deja vu. I mean, this is the first week I joined the board. We were talking about the Western Avenue project and the,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
the
I
others.
don't need to, we don't,
Public safety.
let's take Traffic Safety Committee and Western Ave off,
Okay.
and then we'll just do the capital project update, and then if Traffic Safety wants to come because of their school zone speed
Okay.
vote, they were the ones that
I
voted
mean,
that.
but we are talking about the consideration of Public Safety Committee, which would be the overarching of whatever these others are as they currently exist and as they might be altered in the future to the extent there's alteration capability, right? But we haven't even had that discussion, and we want to have that freely, and all that. People are welcome to pay attention. So just think about that. I like the idea of holding off on the annual reviews or meeting with committees to touch base with them until
Right.
after town meeting. I think
Okay.
that's more appropriate to do that, okay?
But we'll give them a heads up
Yeah.
that we're going to
have
talk
that
about these other
discussion.
things.
Yeah, I think that's good. And stormwater GIS update, that could be interesting. Is that something you'll be ready for then?
I mean, we've been looking at it.
Well,
quite
so
a
let's
while.
keep it on there. Let's keep it on there.
Well,
But to
the
get a,
argument to put it off is that the federal government hasn't issued the
Right.
NPDES stuff, and given the politics of what's going on in Washington, it's not likely that they're going to do that, particularly with midterm elections.
Issue what, Paul? I'm sorry.
The NP and EDS, National Pollution
The
Elimination.
new regulations, you mean?
Yes.
Okay,
And a lot of these programs are mandated through the
right.
generic NP and EDS.
but here's the thing, though. It seems to me, Paul, even if we're still waiting on them to, the government, feds to decide what we need to be doing, we still are subject to the regs that are in existence. And it seemed to me a couple of years back, we had discovered we weren't complying on a timely basis.
I'm just saying it's not urgent in the sense that if you're looking for something, I'm not saying it shouldn't be discussed.
Okay.
I agree, we should continue to discuss it. I thought you were looking for things to.
No, I'm
to
just
make
trying
the
to go
agenda
through.
work a little better, so
Yeah.
that's not something that's a immediate crisis.
Gotcha. But, right, so I'm happy to keep that on here if it's a brief thing. So that's just something, if it's brief and it's more of an update of identifying things that we need to worry about perhaps, things we can't decide on, what we're doing with what we're currently doing,
Okay.
But the one worry is, a few years back, we were scrambling to get caught up in
Right.
compliance.
I mean, we might be able to boot that down because,
All right, your call. What?
well, I mean, I'd like to have a policy of
Okay.
how we spend money out of there. Because it seems like we're going back
Yeah.
now and saying, well, we got all this money, but there was no budget
Yeah,
on how to spend it or what it was gonna go for.
yeah.
There was a presentation before you were on board
Yeah, well, we've seen the breakdown, but it's,
from our consultants.
yeah. Yeah, there was a contract signed with, I don't know, Western Sampson. or
All right.
somebody.
All right, I'm just going to keep moving. All right. And we have a pretty meaty section with Ed Wagner on this agenda here for the Chapter 90, Spring Cleanup Day, some fees, and I see handwritten in on this draft here, what we talked about earlier, the fleet update, what we've got, how we're using it, and all that sort of thing. So if we can do that, that's going to be quite that'll be a full agenda right there.
I didn't say fleet update specifically, I just put the, his capital request.
Okay.
The fleet discussion as part of his.
As part of it, yeah. All right, all right. So, I mean, I think we can keep ourselves busy on that one next week. All right? Anything else jumping out that I'm not really reading here?
Well, the thing about the spring cleanup is that it works best if it's done early. And I understand you've already had discussions with Ed about this.
Yeah.
And there's been a bit of a, I wouldn't say culture difference, but way back when, there used to be all these volunteers who would do things. We'd get Boy Scouts, we'd get citizens, we'd ask everybody to go clean the front of their property, all those kinds of things. And then more recently, in the last few years, there hasn't been the galvanizing the community to action component. We had more tasked the CM&D to go clean up the town with some help from work details from Framingham, MCI, and with some limited public role. So there's like two different models that are out there. The model that I'm familiar with is kind of mobilize everybody to go out and do things.
I mean, that model is great, it's just, it takes a lot of time to mobilize people, and normally I would see that it's, you know, a public works that has a transfer station staff, they would get it off the ground, or a recreation department would get a cleanup day off the ground. So it's me or Ed, and it's just trying to see what we were going small is what we were trying to do to get something on the record. But
It's just if you wait too long, then the poison ivy grows, and then the trash gets hidden under foliage. And
Mid-May is late. Gotta do it before mid-May.
yeah, April is your best bet, or even earlier.
We talking about picking up trash in front of our houses?
Yeah.
Okay.
And having bags,
Yeah.
and pickup of the bags, that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay.
And doing stretches of road, not in front of.
And so the issue is who's going to coordinate this?
well, that's the low end. That's a simple thing that we can do. We can have a repository for bags and go around and pick the
So
stuff
part of
up.
it's picking the right date, that's.
But it's having a community cleanup day with the involvement and going out and getting some groups going on it is a different type of event.
Yeah.
Which groups you talking about? Boy Scouts and
Any group we can get, school groups, business association group, playground association.
I'm sure you want a lot of kids picking up trash from the center of the road.
I think that's what your concern was last time, was you just wanted CM&D and,
There was a safety factor, and I think the last time we had done an organized one was my first year here, and that was the last year we had just had a significant fall off in interest. So we were seeing the participation groups, and it was CM&D bringing a crew on board to pick up the bags, standing ready to help everyone pick up bags, but there was no participation.
So you drive the bags over to CM&D, is it the?
What we had done was we were in organized groups, and we would give them the bags, and exchange of phone numbers, they'd call in, we'd come out, pick them up when they were done, and we sort of complete fall off on participation.
Well, the thing is, this is a beautiful community, and that beauty gets marred when you have beer cans and
That's right.
there was a toilet seat left over my fence. I mean, all this kind of stuff.
Sure wasn't
Well, I was
personal.
trying to get, you know what you feel.
Just odd things are all over the
The
place.
transfer station won't take these things,
It's
so
like-
throw them on the road.
Right,
But-
toilet
but-
seat.
but to do it right, yeah, to do it right, it really, it's organized a community event, which you need to start earlier, where you're doing what you're saying, you keep things green by keeping them clean, or some
We should take pride in our community. We've got a beautiful community. Let's be proud. And part of mobilizing the citizens is it helps build community. It helps build a sense of this place being a special place.
I wonder if the business association would lend a hand with, getting the word out and mobilizing folks. They are very civic-minded, and they have a lot at stake in terms of keeping the
Business
town look nice.
Association, I'd also like to see the baseball coaches, football coaches get a group together, do a group cleanup at each one of the different fields.
Mhm.
There's not
It's
as
a great
much
idea.
litter
There you
there,
go.
but I'd still
Sure.
like to go, this is something we do every year in Medway, is we have a cleanup day, where we get out there with our blowers and everybody.
Blow it over to Sherborn, yeah. we know.
Breaks the infields, does the cleanup along the fence lines, and it really gives Public Works a huge hand. Right. And they step up. I'm meeting with Recreation tomorrow morning, that was one of the things I'd be bringing up to them.
Yeah, as long as you promise to keep their fields cut the frequency they need, right?
Yes.
Could we add farm pond cleanup to the same weekend? Do some, just around the parking lot or over the hill or something like that? I
And we
mean,
would welcome your participation in mobilizing a group, and getting the word out there.
if it's gonna be a weekend and we're gonna do it for the whole community, then let's add as many groups as we can.
All right, maybe we can come back with
I'd love
bright ideas next week.
Pick a
Well,
weekend.
It's on the agenda for next week, right? All I'm suggesting is three things. First, the date's got to be a lot earlier than,
Right, just pick a weekend.
it's got to be a weekend.
The end of April or something.
It's going to be at the end of April, so we're looking at like a month from now. Number two, although it's nice to have CMD do it, because that's all very professional and you all do a great job, there is an additional community spirit, community building element to having the public participate in it that gets lost when everything is done by the government. And thirdly, there is a requirement that you can't graduate from high school these days without a community service component. And I've got kids calling me saying, what would be a good community service program?
Paul says, get that toilet seat off my fence.
Give them a plastic bag
I'm going to bring it by your house.
Thank you.
and give them a
Drop a
plastic
dime on
bag
you
and
both.
road net.
If we're looking to choose a date,
This was supposed
Saturday,
to
and you want it on a
This is next week's
Saturday.
agenda.
This is for next week.
No, there's plenty of
Well,
points.
it is. I'm just suggesting that here's things to think about so we can,
For next week?
for next week.
Yes.
So Saturday, the 26th of April is probably a good date because you're talking about Easter before that.
Says the selectmen will
And-
focus on important
Well,
things.
So it's
yeah.
probably after Easter would be,
Yeah, I don't know how that falls on school vacation week. That there's
School vacation
Is
is
the-
the week before that.
the week
is
before.
the week before, right?
Yeah.
That's why I suggested
Yeah.
we.
All right, well, this will be next week, we'll deal with it. Okay, so that covers our regular agenda items. So we are going to be going into executive session.
Would you call it garbage time at the end of the meeting? when we-
Yeah, there you go. Oh, you have a script? Oh, beautiful. I was gonna make it up as I was going along.
Yeah, it's good.
All right.
No.
So we're not going to come back into open session. So I move that the Board of Selectmen enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's position, and the chair so declares pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21, paragraphs A3, with respect to union contract negotiations with AFL-CIO, State Council 93, Local 35. I need a second and a roll call
Second.
vote. Motion is seconded by Mr. Gymo. Having a second, we'll now have a roll call vote. Mr. Durensis?
Aye.
Mr. Gymo?
Aye.
Mr. Caruso votes aye. Having passed by a vote of 3-0, the open session is now closed. Good night, and we are now in executive session. All right, we'll move to the other room. Thank you all.